Hi, my name's Richy Srano. And what do? I just got married. I got married at 10:10 at 10 a.m. at a 10-minute ceremony on the beach.
Wow.
It was awesome, actually. I got pictures. Came from a musical family. My dad he was a professional piano player, but he was actually a nuclear engineer for about 40 years, but always played piano, so I was always around. Am I supposed to be looking at the camera just anywhere? Okay. He would always come home from work and play music for about 2 hours, play piano. He was an awesome piano player, and so I never really thought anything about it. It was just like, oh yeah, everybody's dad plays piano like that. But when I saw the Beatles on TV as a really young kid, it was like big bang for me. I wanted to be a musician and play guitar specifically. I wanted to be the fifth Beatle in some way. And my parents, thought, the kid's really young, and yeah, the Beatles music was nice. They had great harmonies, really positive energy, despite the long hair and screaming girls at the time. And so they got me 2 years of piano lessons before they would get me the guitar. And in my mind, looking back at it, it was just like, okay, I have to do this if I want to get the guitar. So I had to have 2 years of sitting upright, learning to read music. This real old lady in Jackson, Michigan taught me piano for 2 years, and then Christmas came around and I got Rubber Soul by the Beatles. It was a Beatle album, and I got a guitar that I think cost my parents like $9.95. That was a plywood guitar at Montgomery Ward's, and to me it was like the holy grail. I had my guitar, and so I started from that. And about a year or so, maybe not even a year later, we moved from Michigan to right outside New York City, which is where I basically grew up. But most of our weekends we'd spend going to Philadelphia, where I had aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents down there. And it was a big musical family because every male on my dad's side of the family played at least one instrument. And I had two cousins who were professional musicians who were like 10 years older than me, and they were doing exactly what I wanted to do. So I was like, I wanted to hang with them and get as much information with them, from them as possible. And in order for me to be able to do that and play with them and not be like, get away from me, kid, you bother me, I had to become a quick study. My cousins would show it to me once, and I'd have to be able to play it and sound like what they were playing. And if I couldn't do that, I'd have to sit back and kind of watch my cousin Eddie's hands and kind of figure it out and use my ear, and played my first professional gigs with him when I was 11 years old, and continued to play till today. Or at least yesterday. I had a gig yesterday. I taught this morning. Well, certainly started with my dad, and then the Beatles and my cousins, and I got into all the usual people, Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. Although when like Clapton, when he was playing with Cream, and I really got into a guy named Terry Kath, who played with a band called Chicago. And before Jimi Hendrix died, he said that was his favorite guitar player, was Terry Kath. And he did a lot of the same stuff. He was a lot more jazzy, and so I started getting into more jazzy stuff, and then got into Richie Blackmore and Deep Purple and some of the heavier bands. But then I got into Yes, and old Genesis, and Jeff Beck was a big influence. And bands like Gentle Giant, Vishnu Orchestra. Steely Dan was a big influence when I was a kid. And then it was, I was really lucky to be influenced by a lot of people I would happen to be in the same town with. There was a guy named David Torn when I was in college in Ithaca, and Kelly Minucci, who I played with as well. And then when I got to LA, a lot of the people that were, I idolized, growing up, like Alan Holdsworth and Robin Ford, were teaching at the school, and got to know them then. Other guys like Frank Gambale and Scott Henderson. We may or may not know any of those people, but they were students and then taught at the same school that I taught at after we all graduated at different times. So I was really lucky to be around a lot of people who were influencing me, but know them on a personal basis as well, and get to play with them. So I was really fortunate as far as influences. Never got to meet any of the Beatles, but that would have been kind of cool. As far as, I'm newly married, and a lot of my travel work gigs were able to work in sort of some vacation time. If I was going out and doing a clinic in California, and Jen's never been to California, got her out, came at the end of it, and we were able to spend 4 or 5 days driving around California where she'd never been. I played in Las Vegas. Jen had never been there. He said, okay, cool, we'll just go out west and hang out in Las Vegas. What we remember of what we did there, I think we had a good time while we were in Vegas. And so, I've been able to balance things like that when the kids are a little bit older and they're not necessarily coming on the gigs. But certainly there have been times where it's like, I have a diorama right over there from when I went on the road. I was touring with this lady named Amy Daly, and we were on tour with Toby Keith, and I don't know how long the tour was, but a pretty long time, and definitely missed my kids, being on the road. And I got a little diorama over there. Alex, who's now 18 from being on the road, I just found it. I'm trying to save it. So sometimes it's okay, sometimes it can be difficult, but it's a long time that you're away. Out of college, we had moved to Arizona, and I worked for IBM for a little bit, trying to use my business degree, and worked for First Interstate Bank in their management training program, and absolutely hated every aspect of it. And when my ex-wife finished her master's, it was kind of my turn. I was either going to get an MBA, but I knew I would be miserable doing any of that type of work. So I was miserable trying to do that sort of stuff. But music was always part of my life, and something I felt I was good at, and somehow be able to make a living. And instead of going and getting my MBA, the school that I ended up teaching at was a pretty new school. So we had together like a 5-year game plan. I was going to do 1 year to go to the school, pour myself into it, and try to establish myself in a career. And my sort of vague goal was that when I went into the school, I wanted to be good enough to be able to teach there. Not thinking I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to be good enough to be able to teach at the school, which kind of worked out. My 5 years ended up being 11 years in Los Angeles before we moved to here. Try to master your instrument and learn as much about the history of the people that you like currently and who they listen to. But I think another thing to help people working, then you learn this really quickly in a big city, and don't be an asshole is basically what I would say, is a big piece of advice, because you have to work with people.